Hello there, NPCs. Do not attempt to adjust your television channel or however you're watching this. Sarah has not gone bald and grown a beard. I am John McDonald. I am filling in for Rem today. If you're recognizing my voice, I have actually done a Rules of Cool interview before, as well as I am Zordon in the Alternate Archives in the Power Ranger podcast, and on Sundays. I am the havoc wreaking gnome of like clockwork fame. Welcome to Rules of Cool, where we interview very special guests, creators, gamers, designers, and world builders. I'm your host, John, and today we're talking with A. Scott Glancy, one of the creators of the Call of Cthulhu supplement, Delta Green. You'll want to stay tuned because you won't want to miss it. Scott has graciously donated tonight's giveaway 3 books. Count them 3 for your book stand from the old ones themselves, including Bumps in the Night, a collection of non-mythos scenarios for Call of Cthulhu, 120 pages. Thank you for playing our ghoulish Vanna White, Scott. We got Final Flight, a standalone Call of Cthulhu scenario set aboard a doomed South American airliner, and then the Mysteries of Mesoamerica, which is a source book on Mesoamerican archaeology, culture, and religion with 4 scenarios, count them 4, to take advantage of in that setting. That's 214 pages of goodness, along with all the other pages I'm not going to do the math on, but it's a lot. You can type hashtag REMPC into the chat for your free entry to win. Don't forget, you can get bonus entries by subscribing and donating bits through the Twitch chat, which you are probably watching right now. Every 100 bits gets you a bonus entry, and subscribing gets you 7 extra bonus entries, which is a good thing. In Rem Alternus news, we have the Exit Vector aerial combat minis game. It's coming to Kickstarter this year. We've had a Rules of Cool interview previously with the Exit Vector creators, so hopefully you're real stoked for that. It helps to give your pilot some much-deserved attention, and it's a rules-like game, or you can use it as part of your cyberpunk role-playing system. Get your rigor on with Exit Vector and follow the link in the chat as you see it to check out the project. And don't forget to enter your email to make sure you're getting one of those first sweet Kickstarter deals. We also have Subversion, the new cyberpunk fantasy TTRPG by our good friends at Bragging Unicorn Games. That's coming soon to Kickstarter too. It's time to build your community, subvert authority, and do it at every turn in a gritty Neo-Babylon setting. Follow the project before it goes live. That's another link in the chat. And we're going to get right into our conversation in a moment because we have a lot to talk about what's going on with the old ones. Stay tuned, REM PCs. Thank you. Welcome back, everyone. I am here with A. Scott Glancy, who will be calling Scott. Hi, Scott. Welcome to Rules of Cool.
Thank you for having me. I'm very thrilled that I qualify for, anything with the word cool in the title, so that's good.
This is the age of coolness is kind of what you do with it, and I think it's super cool. We were talking about this before we started, but the kind of Neo Cthulhu movement is something I think is really neat to see the way that people have kind of embraced the old one mythology, the weirdness in the world, taking all of those things in our nightmares and turning them from Boulet Brothers Dracula into reality. And I'm a big fan of that. So let's start there. Let's start kind of with either your history as like a gamer or your history with Cthulhu. Like, were you 8 years old reading Cthulhu books like under a blanket in your room with a flashlight kind of thing?
Well, there's something to that. When I was in, I guess I was in going from fourth to fifth grade. It was summer between fourth and fifth grade, and I had a teacher. I had been in a program for gifted kids in the public school, and the teacher who ran that program near the end of the summer, after I'd left, that fourth grade class, I was going to a different school, but in that summer, she came forward and said, "Hey, I've got this game that I wanted to, I just discovered, and I wanted to try it out on some of the kids of the program." And strangely enough, it was me and a couple other people from the program, friends from the neighborhood, Mary Horn and Brian Park, guys that I'd known since I was like 5. And we sat out on the porch of my family home that summer and got to playing Dungeons and Dragons for the first time out of the Dungeons and Dragons basic box set, with our crumbling dice and the single rule book, and right off the bat,
did you have a dice color? Did you get superstitious about your dice color as the years went by?
No, I never did. I can't say that I ever did. And sadly, I do not have any of my perfectly spherical 4-sided dice that I picked up in 1978 or whatever it was that I first came across those things. They would be rolled until they were perfect spheres by now. But I might have some in one of these old Gamma World sets that I picked up recently, because I was also a Gamma World fan pretty quickly after I discovered Dungeons and Dragons. But Dungeons and Dragons was my first outing into role-playing games. Again, happened when I was about 9 to 10 years old. Same friend, Brian Park, the guy who lived down the street from me, is the guy who introduced me to Lovecraft. He was about the same age, and he had an old Arkham House collection, I believe, of Lovecraft stories. And it was one of these things where, much like he was breaking out a forbidden tome that someone was not supposed to look upon, he got out this moldy old book from the 1940s and cracked it open and directed me immediately, with no dinner, no flowers, took me directly to the sequence in the Dunwich Horror, where Wilbur Whateley, the horrifying spawn of Yog Sothoth, has been chewed up by the guard dogs at Miskatonic University while he was trying to steal a copy of the Necronomicon. And there's this description of this alien and foreign, creepy entity melting down on the floor of the library, literally dissolving into just muck after it dies, completely foreign to any kind of terrestrial biology or chemistry. And that description, of Wilbur Whateley was pretty grisly and pretty weird. And I remember reading that and being like, okay, you've just showed me the selling point, you show me the payoff. I don't know why I should go back in and work my way up to the payoff again. I mean, I feel like I got the highlights of it. And it took me a while to go back to Lovecraft, but eventually I did. And I think that one of the reasons I went back into Lovecraft was not because I saw Lovecraftian monster stats in the old deities and demigods, but because somebody started playing the actual game Call of Cthulhu, and in my game group, and it was really interesting to play in a semi-modern setting, where it was about firearms, not crossbows and swords, where it was lawyers and doctors and archaeologists rather than elves and dwarves and gnomes and whatever. And that setting where you stayed as fragile as you were first level, where you were incredibly fragile characters against incredibly tough and problematic monsters, was a real departure from the power fantasy that had been D&D. It was very difficult to get any dread into a group of players playing D&D once they got above a certain level. Call of Cthulhu was a game where, nope, you're there, the dread's there all the time. You're sweating because you only have 12, 13 hit points to start with. And, that's two solid hits from an enemy, max. So you choose when you're going to get violent. Real careful in Call of Cthulhu. You don't just kick down a door and figure, we'll just, if it turns out it's an entire warehouse full of ninjas, we'll sort it out. We'll figure it out once we get in there. Nobody does that.
Cthulhu ninjas sound tougher. I feel like old one ninjas would be a difficult concept.
Well, that's not even the problem. It's just that, Call of Cthulhu is a game where, even when it came to the weakest opponents, so-called weakest, a cultist, the cultist is exactly as tough as you are. And oh no, there's 6 of them. Suddenly it was a thing where you had to think first before you leaped, and you had to plan carefully. And if there was it was a game that pushed us away from simple door kicking. Check for traps, kick the door. That we had sort of been in.
That's assuming the door is not a mimic and is in fact actually a door, which is its own problem.
I have to ask the question. I presume that if the door is a mimic, it doesn't detect traps, doesn't do anything. It just you just go, it's not a trap, and then it just eats you. Is that how it works?
It's something like that. It's just when your foot goes to kick it, it just kind of inhales the foot, and then you know for sure. So somewhere between the scene in Dunwich Horror that has a very Eraserhead vibe there, and Call of Cthulhu, probably the germinations of pagan publishing came into your mind. Did that
absolutely
much farther down the road?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I am minding my own business, going to law school, and I go to a very tiny little game store in Gainesville, Florida, and I don't know if I can. Let's see. The illustrations on the covers of the original copies of The Unspeakable Oath. It was a fanzine, a zine, literally, made in the 1990s. This is probably
1990 zine. That's the best. That's the stuff right there.
This is probably the most safe for work cover I can show. But there were
We appreciate that here at Rebel Traders via GenCon TV. Definitely for sure.
These were made by the covers were done by an illustrator named Blair Reynolds, and Blair stuck around with Pagan Publishing all the way until he did all the illustrations for Mysteries of Mesoamerica. But he did a lot of great illustrations.
You can win a copy of today in our giveaway.
Correct. He even
RemPC.
But Blair was friends with some guys from Missouri, from the University of Missouri. That's where Pagan Publishing came from. It came from a group of friends at the university who were gamers, part of the game club. Guys like John Crow, Brian Appleton, Jeff Barber was part of that crew. He went on to have a career in gaming. Did games like Blue Planet back in the early aughts. Dennis Detweiler, who's still doing gaming stuff, working with Arc Dream Publishing, as am I, and John Tynes, who was the sort of the founding father of the thing, since he was the one who knew the most about how to do layout back then, when you were literally chopping stuff up with scissors and gluing it together to do your, take photographs of your layout, and then
the original Photoshop, scissors and glue.
Yeah, that was how some of their original work started off before John, was the first guy to unravel some of the early layout programs in desktop publishing in the, like I said, 1990. So they started doing this thing called The Unspeakable Oath, which was their a fanzine for Call of Cthulhu. That's where, and then out of this zine became Pagan Publishing, where John and his crew started publishing entire Call of Cthulhu campaigns under license from Chaosium. That's how they originally got started. I came to the game late. I was not a founding father of Pagan Publishing. All I did was, turn up out here in Seattle once they had moved their operation out to the city of Seattle, because this is where WotC was. This is where Wizards of the Coast was operating. John got a job with WotC.
There's also the old one
back
that
in the day.
lives underneath Seattle too.
Yeah.
It's not common knowledge, but there is an old one that lives,
Well,
down the sewer system.
one of the questions that I was fed earlier was like, what was your first tastes of horror? And I want to mention that one of my earliest tastes of horror was from the TV series Kolchak the Night Stalker with Darren McGavin from the 1970s. There's only one season of this, and they made two made-for-TV movies. Both of them were scripted by Richard Matheson, the guy who wrote things like I Am Legend, amongst other, horror stuff. But Matheson was an old-time, horror writer. I think he also, I'm forgetting all of his titles, but he wrote this story called The Night Stalker, which was a modern vampire story set in Las Vegas. And Darren McGavin plays the reporter who figures out that it's not a serial killer, it's a vampire. And the second one, The Night Strangler, they set in Seattle, of all things. The second made-for-TV movie was set in Seattle, and instead of a vampire, it's some mad alchemist who has been making a formula, an elixir vitae, so he can live forever. He just needs to harvest, parts of people's brains to put in his, juicer or whatever blender and turn into his immortality smoothie that he is going to use to live forever. And part of that story takes place in the Seattle Underground, which, if you guys have not heard about the Seattle Underground, it is literally this weird section of downtown Seattle where, because the drainage was bad and the city was flooding, they raised all the streets an entire floor and turned the ground floors of all these buildings in Seattle into basements. And
which never goes wrong. Everything about that is safe and handled well, I'm sure. Plenty of infrastructure, no old ones underneath.
Yeah. And in The Night Strangler, of course, they got into the underground, and I was very impressed with the idea of a sunken 19th century city underneath Seattle. But it wasn't really underneath Seattle. It was just the Bradbury building in downtown Los Angeles, which is the same building that Harrison Ford chases Rutger Hauer around in Blade Runner, right? It's just this very strange building with this big atrium and wrought ironwork, and it looks very 19th century steampunk. But okay. But I imagine that's what the Seattle Underground looked like. I was much disappointed when I actually took a tour and found out it was just basements.
So we've got old ones under the earth in Seattle. We've got vampires in Vegas. We've got all these unspeakable oaths happening in Gainesville, Florida, probably with a whole bunch of alligators around, I'm guessing.
There are a fair number of alligators. I mean, it is Florida after all.
So how much of all of these kind of things in both pagan publishing and in Call of Cthulhu, how much of that kind of influences Delta Green? I'd love to be able to kind of dive in and really talk about it. Like what influences from all of that ended up in kind of Delta Green? Well,
I will say that two big things influenced the first Delta Green book. One of them was, the main thing is, okay, what I brought to the table when it came to doing the first Delta Green book was, I brought basically my job search. When I was in law school, I was trying to get a job with the federal government. There's the cover of the original Delta Green with some horrified investigators and more artwork by the horrifying Blair Reynolds.
What year did this first Delta Green book came out for those of us?
1996.
Okay, 1996. That was a great year. Yeah.
John Tynes, however, had published the first Delta Green scenario in The Unspeakable Oath, #7. And this came out.
Gorgeous book. That's a gorgeous book right there, too.
Yes, and again, more covers by, Blair Reynolds. And this book came out, I'd say about 7 months before the first X-Files dropped. So John was playing around with the idea that he wanted a campaign setting for Call of Cthulhu. One thing Call of Cthulhu had never really had is, from a player point of view, a campaign setting around which to build your group. There wasn't a foundation or or
There
a
wasn't like an
brutal.
ongoing story that you could really do week
Yeah,
to week. There was no
yeah,
episodical version
yeah.
of Call of Cthulhu.
And it was a little bit like, you were just going to be like Carl Kolchak in The Night Stalker, and just you'd be a reporter, and weird stuff would just happen to you. That's what would arrive on your doorstep. Other people are covering, the building commission and the new stadium that's going in. You're going to one who's going to get the fact that people are stealing brains and making them into smoothies. But it
Works for
sort of feels.
Scooby-Doo.
It feels sort of weird after a while, where all this weird stuff starts to happen to one set of characters, presuming they survive the scenarios. I mean, you start to think maybe they're cursed. Maybe they're just stuck where weird things are attracted to them. I mean, how many times in Call of Cthulhu can you have an uncle that you've never heard of until this time you sat down to game die and leave you a mansion? Or a book, or a idol, or something, or a trunk filled with his old expedition notes from when he went to Antarctica 30 years ago, and suddenly those things are the kickoff for the game. John wanted to create a situation where you had somebody would bring you the next adventure from outside. The players didn't have to be on the lookout for the next adventure. It would be brought in by an outside force. And one of the first things they did for that was they made this. This is the Golden Dawn. This was a supplement set in Victorian England. And the idea was the players are members of the real Golden Dawn. So there's a lot of information in there about the actual mystic society of people who believed in ritual magic and things like that. And as members of this society, the Golden Dawn, you would be in a Victorian clearinghouse for information about the supernatural. If some weird thing happened in the Shetland Islands, that information would find its way to the Golden Dawn through whatever kind of, coconut telegraph was going to bring the rumors to you, or you'd have,
or if like the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, if like the coconut is floating on top of their little submarine they use to get places.
So that way you had a couple things going on. Being members of the Society of the Golden Dawn, you would be at a place where information about weird and supernatural things and mysteries would arrive regularly. Also, if your characters got killed, which happens quite frequently in Call of Cthulhu, or go mad, then what would happen is you'd have a place to explain why you've got a replacement character, rather than being halfway through Chaosium's Masks of Nyarlathotep and having had half the party get wiped out under the pyramids outside Cairo, and the next thing you know, you're trying to find replacement characters in Cairo, and what luck, the bellhop here at Shepherd's is actually a veteran of the First World War and a professional archaeologist who'd love to help you go fight some cosmic evil.
That's kismet right there. That's just how life works, That's kismet right there, yeah.
So rather than have that happen, he wanted a way that you could bring in replacement characters. And so Golden Dawn was the first shot at that. And Delta Green was his second. And what he wanted to do with Delta Green was to create a thing where there's a government agency, sort of. And the original idea was we couldn't make it a government agency because an agency would imply so much power that the players could palm the problem off on other parts of a bureaucracy, if there is a bureaucracy, right? Yeah. You just can't push a button and have a airstrike to solve the problem. He had the idea that Delta Green was around, got disbanded because of some supernatural version of the Bay of Pigs that spent all their credibility in Washington, and they were defunded and just put out to pasture. And what we have now is, instead of a government agency, we have a secret society inside the government made up of veterans of the original Delta Green, back when they did have an official mandate and a budget and a parking garage and all the things that come with that. And then also made up of people who are inside the federal bureaucracy of law enforcement, intelligence, and the military, who have run across weird stuff. It could also include civilians who've run across this. And the idea was that because you're part of a society, You've got a way to replace missing characters who get killed during the game without stretching credulity. And you also have a constant flow of new missions coming to the group saying, okay, one of our contacts up in, Kansas has discovered something wrong at the L. Frank Baum Museum in Wamego, Kansas. Get up there and check out the flying monkeys. And, that would be the start of another game. And you go do that. And then you'd return to your normal duties at whatever agency or government organ you worked for. And so despite the fact that players have a little bit of training and a little bit of background of being investigators, they have to keep their investigations secret from their higher-ups. They can't just run off and do stuff. They have no license to kill. They do not get to just commit acts of terrorism on U.S. soil in order to solve a Cthulhu problem, They have to do everything on the down low, and that way the game would be balanced. It wouldn't be just a thing. Yeah, it wouldn't make it easy for the player. So you're not going to shoot Cthulhu with a machine gun. You're not going to nuke him. None of that's going to happen. You're going to be still faced with the same trials and tribulations that private citizen investigators in the old Call of Cthulhu were faced with. They just don't. They have some authority. They can abuse it a little, but it can come back to haunt them real fast if they're just trying to badge their way into and out of everything.
I really like that because it bears in mind the British version of the Avengers before the before the Marvel Avengers. There was the British Avengers. It's got kind of a Hellboy or Torchwood feel, so something really familiar. Is that still where Delta Green is? Is that still kind of the spirit of Delta Green? It's a secret society, or what is going on with it right now?
Well, that was what we published in the 90s all the way through the turn of the century. And the thing is, of course, is that when we originally were building this, it was pre 9/11, and we were between 1991 when the Soviet Union collapsed and 9/11/01 is a strange period of American history where we, as politically, started getting in. I mean, conspiracy theories really started to take off. The most powerful thing in the world was the U.S. government. It was completely unchallenged in its power, although honestly, much of that power is illusory because, a bunch of guys with box cutters can knock over a couple of buildings in downtown, Manhattan and put a big old hole in the size of the Pentagon. So all that power maybe wasn't as powerful as everyone thought. But it was a time when people would start, looking at their government as the problem because the old Soviet Union went away, the big boogeyman, and hadn't been replaced by the jihadist boogeyman that had sort of been picked up since then.
We like our boogeymen in America. Lots of boogeymen going on here in America.
So we started, so there was a time when we were hearing rumors about, it was when the first stories about the FEMA camp started showing up, the stories about black helicopters, the stories about the New World Order and plans for the UN to take over, or it's where David Icke was doing his, shape-changing reptoids nonsense, even back then in the 1990s. And, Chris Carter came in with the X-Files and just, surfed that wave until he ran out of story ideas, I guess. And then he made a couple more seasons of X-Files, even though he clearly run out of ideas. But that zeitgeist was out there.
You always need some romance with the reptiles. You always need just a bit of romance to offset the reptile people and government. That's just good public policy right there.
I've never really understood why anyone found the reptoid, the shape-changing reptoid conspiracy theory even remotely attractive, since we all watched V, on television on NBC or whoever was showing the TV series V, where the aliens were
in the 1970s, I believe that was the 1970s, and they remade it in the 2000s. It was so good.
But okay, so apparently people like reptoid, aliens, I guess. So that's where Delta Green started off, as in a period of sort of inward gazing paranoia. One of the things that we sort of did with the new, now that was when it was just we licensed it from Chaosium, put the Chaosium logo on the books, and published it that way. We've since relaunched Delta Green as its own standalone game system. And we've changed a lot of things. Here it is in its wonderful double slipcover with both the...
Oh, it's got a double slipcover. Oh, that's so good. That'll look great on the... It looks great on the shelves.
Now,
everyone loves the slipcover.
The thing we did here is we divided the rule books into two sections. There's a player's book and there's the game master's book. Because Delta Green was a game of deep background, deep setting, and mysteries and secrets to be revealed, we wanted the players to have a book that have all the things they need to know how to make a character and accomplish tasks and shoot guns, drive cars, do all of the sort of action-oriented things that might come with a game about espionage and law enforcement and stuff like that. Meanwhile, the handler's book, the handler and agent handler being a term of art from espionage, that's our game master's book. In that book, that's where you find things like, how does the creepy mythos magic work? What are the creepy mythos creatures of the Cthulhu mythos? What are the opposition? What's the opposition this time around? The first time we built opposition for Delta Green, one of the things we used was the old Majestic 12 conspiracy theory. There's an old conspiracy theory that there's a group called Majestic 12 that helped dismantle the flying saucer that crashed at Roswell in 1947, outside the 509th bomb wing. How strange that the UFO incident happened right outside the only place on Earth where there was a military unit armed with nuclear weapons. Clearly the aliens were coming to check on us and seeing if we're going to be a problem. Okay, that's the conspiracy.
It's not very majestic of them, though. It's not a good name.
The idea that the aliens show up, check and see, how we were doing with our primitive nuclear weapons and immediately crash their spaceship just doesn't read very well. But all right,
that's what happened in War of the Worlds. You come to our planet, you catch a bug, and you die. That's how it works. And maybe you get to meet Tom Cruise sometime. But yeah, so
that was our first opposition, and they were part of the U.S. government. And the idea was, we decided that we took the Roswell story, right? Little gray aliens, spaceship crashes, and we used that. We built that old existing conspiracy theory into the Cthulhu mythos. We injected into that story Lovecraftian elements, namely his creations, the fungi from Yuggoth, the Migo, these aliens that have come to Earth to exploit the place and exploit the resources, and who have human agents on Earth who smooth the way for them and allow them to get away with stuff. We had this idea that what if the aliens are no longer using a cult, but we're actually using the U.S. government? And that, of course, is part of the Majestic 12 conspiracy theory that, oh my goodness, the U.S. government is going to sell us out to aliens. And you see that all over the X-Files. Now, the thing is that most conspiracy theories are always about, the people we trust, the institutions that we believe in, are always about to sell us out. And that, no one you should have any faith in can be trusted.
That's kind of what I like about Shadowrun is we've already been sold out. Everything that happens in Shadowrun is after the selling out of humanity, essentially.
Yeah, you're not losing anything. It's already happened.
Not losing anything. It's already done.
So that was our original bad guys, which was this sort of powerful deep state. Hate to use the term, but this powerful organization inside the United States government that was trading cooperation with aliens for alien technology so they can stay on top of the world and have the inside dope on new technologies that were coming out and make themselves fabulously wealthy in the bargain.
They never want to do the replicator from Star Trek. They always want the weapons. They never want the replicator from Star Trek. They never.
How does the replicator create scarcity, which creates value? What are you, some sort of communist? That's not what we're doing here. We want the de-replicator that makes things go away so that my things can be more valuable.
I would give you all of my gold press platinum to hear about what's going on in Delta Green today, right at this very moment.
All right, here's what's happening now. we're in a new age. There was a time when we were really worried about what was the government doing. What are they up to? And what are they not telling us? Well, the thing is, when 9/11 happened, we kind of saw what the government was doing. They told us what they were doing. Hi, we're going to tap all your phones forever, okay? There's going to be this thing called the Patriot Act. We're going to just have robots that fly over other countries and just kill people. Boom. Murdering flying robots. That's what we're going to do. We're going to have an open debate on just how much torture we can possibly have when it comes to keeping us all safe. You want to be safe, don't you? Well, let's talk about where the arrow should be on the scale of how much torture should we use to feel safe. And that was the zeitgeist after the turn of the century. And so what we sort of thought we wanted to do with Delta Green is, for years, people had said, oh, wow, I like Delta Green a lot, but I really wish Delta Green was official. I wish I could play a Delta Green back when they, had a budget and they had, their own helicopters and had all the toys that they wanted and could be James Bond. And we're like,
when
okay.
They were, or like Unit from Doctor Who.
Exactly.
Would be a really appropriate metaphor, yeah.
And so we're like, okay, careful what you wish for.
Oh, there you go. They wished for it, and the Cthulhu came out of the water.
Yeah, so we've had the Cthulhu paw close up and give them what they wish for. Congratulations, Delta Green is now official. What does that mean? That means that as agents, you are going to get still assigned missions. You're still going to be sent out in the field to take care of supernatural problems. You're still going to have replacements that come in. You're still going to be acting essentially illegally. And so don't expect that you're going to get a lot of, don't get caught is still the maximum of the organization. Because we're not going to have a get out of jail free card if you blow up a shopping mall. But now when you capture an evil mythos sorcerer who was trying to open a gate to another world to let in his dark master Yog-Sothoth from beyond time and space, rather than in the old Delta Green where they're like, well, we can't take this guy and arrest him. I mean, he'll just make a dimensional gateway and zip right out of his jail cell. You can't, we can't put him on trial for something that nobody believes in. Summoning a dark god. What part of the penal code is that? So we're just going to just shoot him in the back of the head and leave him on the side of the road and call that a done deal. That happened in Delta Green a lot. We just get rid of the problem and we go, okay, we saved the world. It cost us some sand points to do it, but cost benefit. We're still doing the good job. We're still the good guys, even we just committed a murder. Yeah. Now, instead, it's kind of even worse because you find that evil sorcerer, and he does have a way to open dimensional doors and zip from one place to another without transversing the space in between. And
he might also be the governor of Wyoming?
No. You're right about to put him in that shallow grave on the side of the road when your cell phone goes off and they're like, no, bring the asset in. We want to analyze it. And you're suddenly in a situation where your players don't know what their higher-ups are up to anymore because it's not a small organization. It used to be, Delta Green was designed to be small. Only, I think, something like less than 100 members in it, across the entire country. Now it's more, and there are all these people that you're never going to get to meet who are going to make decisions about how your mission should go that might make it more dangerous for you or more dangerous for everybody. What are they going to do with this guy when they take him off to Guantanamo or whatever black site they're going to interrogate him at? Are they going to let him show them how to open a gate? Is he going to set off a supernatural neutron bomb by doing that? What if some guy in a lab coat somewhere thinks, we don't need him, we've got his notes, I'm sure we can understand it, and we'll do it ourselves. And then you lose the state of Wyoming. It's just gone the next day because somebody.
It's already flat. No one's going to notice.
You just put up those big, road closed for construction signs and hope that since there's only 700,000 people in Wyoming, they won't be missed. There's actually
put a little dome over it, just like Stephen King does. That's fine.
I'm suddenly creeped out because there's only 700,000 people in Wyoming, and we've lost over 1 million to COVID. So technically, that could have been the entire state of Wyoming right there.
That's the zombies right there. So all of this stuff, all of this really great black site up, all this kind of wrestling with the government, that's all in this like double set.
Yes, this is all in the Delta Green role-playing game, which is now, like I say, a standalone game. One of the things
you don't need any of the other like books for it. They're just super cool editions.
Yeah, they're just cool to have. We also published this book, which we call The Conspiracy, which is a reprint of the old Delta Green books from the 90s. So if you want to play with a 90s zeitgeist, you can do that. And we also did a little job here with Pelgrane Press with this book, The Fall of Delta Green, which is Delta Green set in the 1960s, leading up to when they screw up in Cambodia.
Is that like a tentacle coming up to get?
Yes, that is a
helicopter. That
is a tentacle snatching Huey out of the sky.
That was either a brontosaurus, and I was going to go Land of Lost, or it was the tentacle. Either way, I'm very happy.
It's a tentacle. So that was something that Ken Hite put together for us. Speedy recovery, Ken. So we're hopefully going to do some stuff set during World War II eventually. Is
the World War II stuff like a Harry Turtledove alternate history, or is it like a time travel thing where you go back to World War II?
When we're doing World War II stuff, it'll be set during that time period, not a time travel story. It's not going to be alternate history. We already sort of created a history where, yes, the Nazis tried in the last months of the war, when they were completely losing, to try to use the supernatural to tip the balance back to their favor. But it was usually a disaster. The only thing they succeeded in doing was, again,
their faces melted off against Indy Jones. It's the whole thing.
Yeah, exactly. They set off little supernatural Chernobyls every once in a while trying to, keep the Third Reich from getting plowed under. So we already have sort of stuff about that in our history. The idea being that no one ever really managed to turn supernatural magic into a reliable power source. Sometimes it worked out okay. Sometimes it just completely failed. So it could never be an instrument of state power. And that is one of the things that's going on in the modern Delta Green. Those lessons are forgotten. Now that they've seen that there is a way to cheat physics and cheat reality, there are people somewhere, some smart guy in an office someplace who goes, look, just because it melted the Nazis' faces off, and just because it didn't work for Stalin, doesn't mean we're going to do it wrong. We're smarter than them. We can totally make a deal with Yog Sothoth. I'm a great deal maker.
This leopard's not going to eat my face off. That's not going to happen.
That's an extremely apt comparison. Yes. And so at some point in the gameplay of the modern Delta Green, you have to, sort of, your character's in a situation where they may have to rein in their betters. Yeah. And it's a question of how do you do that and still not get arrested, not go to jail, not get bumped off, not get ruined. And one of the things we added to Delta Green, which I'm very proud about, Shane Ivey, one of our writers on the new Delta Green, did a really good job coming up with this a new sanity system. The old sanity system of Call of Cthulhu was very hit point like. You lost points, they went down. If they go down 5 at a time or a certain percentage of what's left of your total, you could suffer temporary insanities, things like that. Shane had this idea, probably based on watching the first season of True Detective, that staying sane is less about a pool of points that you have than it is with your contacts in the world, your bonds to other people, your family, your friends. Yeah. Things like that are what keep you sane as opposed to isolation. And and so he created a thing where we made sure that, you could roll up a character and he can be a an orphan who was raised by ninjas, okay, and has no friends or family. That's fine, but his sanity is going to be a lot more fragile than somebody who's on speaking terms with their parents, has kids, an ex-wife, and this mechanic is such that what gets damaged, not only do you have a pool of points that go down, but you can sort of stop it going down by laying the damage to your sanity off on your bonds. So you can keep yourself on track during the mission, only to go home and yell at your wife about stuff that you have no business yelling at your wife about, or kick the family dog, or kick over your kids' Legos or something, or throw a fit because you stepped on one. You damage those relationships because you're keeping all this trauma bottled up, and those relationships start to fragment. And so characters have to make a choice, much like we have to do in real life. Are you going to heal those bonds? Are you going to work on developing those bonds and heal those bonds? Or is your character going to go off and go to rifle practice and get better at shooting a gun? Or are they going to stay home and take their wife on vacation and try and shirk off some of this damage you've done to your friends and family because you're doing horrible things to protect the world, things you can't tell them about, and there's a cost.
I really like that, because I've seen that a lot now, especially in, I know Delta Green's not necessarily new, but in the kind of this new iteration, a lot of what we experience in Misfit Youth about community and about what we owe each other, stuff like The Good Place, seems to be a big part of this kind of new mythology we're creating in tabletop gaming. But there's also something really cool and retro about it. I'm thinking specifically with this new sanity meter of the really old British spy series, The Prisoner, where this ex-spy is taken to like this little perfect Alzheimer-like town and is basically gaslit because spies aren't allowed to retire. And so it's this really intriguing idea of reality, surreality, and the things of Cthulhu, what makes sanity. And I really like kind of the merging of those ideas personally.
I got to admit to my complete lack of originality. One of the things that I brought to the original Delta Green back in the 90s when I was writing it was to have this thing that Delta Green agents say to each other at the end of the mission before they break up and go back to their regular jobs. What they say to their team members is, "Be seeing you," which is the salute that everyone says in the village to Patrick McGowan. And they say it with this thing where they go, "Be seeing you." Of course, J. Michael Straczynski picked that up and had the guys from Psy-Corps doing that as the "Be seeing you" thing, and that turned up there too. I think we got to it first with Delta Green, but I can't guarantee that. But yes, The Prisoner, huge influence on that level of paranoia where he's in a prison disguised as a village, as a town,
an idyllic village, the village where like people often idealize wanting to go to.
Yeah, like a retirement community. And even better, you can't tell. The guards aren't allowed to leave either. What are the guards except prisoners who've decided to collaborate? Essentially, they don't even see their guards in the village. They don't even know who their guards are. There's always that, number one, since everyone has numbers. You only ever see the new number two. You never see number one. And who are your guards? Who is a prisoner and who is a guard? And at some point, you can't tell the difference. So, yes, love The Prisoner.
Yeah. So all this really cool stuff's coming out with Pagan Publishing. Is Pagan Publishing only doing Delta Green? Only doing
Pagan Publishing? Pagan Publishing is really just a hobby for me right now. I haven't put out a book for Pagan Publishing in a long time. The new stuff is being put together. The new Delta Green stuff is being put out by Arc Dream Publishing, and I'm in partnership with the other authors of Delta Green: John Tynes, Dennis Detweiler. Those are the three who originally did the first books, and with people like Blair Reynolds providing the artwork, and Dennis Detweiler as well did that, plus artists like Torrin Atkinson and Heather Hudson and John Schneider all did great work back in the 90s. And we've added a guy to the list. Shane Ivey, or I'm forgetting Shane's name. Thanks, Shane. You know, he runs Arc Dream now, and he's set up Arc Dream as a publishing house for a number of different games, including WrestleNomicon, which is a card-based Cthulhu wrestling game.
Ooh, WrestleNomicon? Did I hear that
WrestleNomicon.
WrestleNomicon. Get in the comments, as Brendan Lee Mulligan would say.
Dennis Datweiler and Greg Stolze have published a game called Godlike, which was a game of superhero powers during World War II. However, the superhero powers during World War II are much closer to something like the TV series Heroes, where you might have a superpower, but you can certainly get blowed up real good too. Not every superpower is created equally. Just because you can fly doesn't mean you're bulletproof, you know. And
we see that too in like Wild Card Anthology or The Boys, which is pretty popular.
Yes, absolutely. The Boys is a good connection to, how things work in Godlike. Although Dennis pointed out something about superpowers. If you have the strength to pick up a tank, but you still only weigh 200 pounds, how do you have the leverage to reach out with one hand and just straight arm the tank up into the air? You only weigh 200 pounds. I mean, wouldn't that just mean the tank stays still and your whole body moves, you know? I mean,
I would do it for the TikTok and the popularity. That's probably why I'm not a superhero, because then it's all about the popularity.
But his superheroes in his game are about bending reality. It's about literally the human mind just deciding that this is the way reality works in this limited case. I can pick up a tank, and he can. It breaks physics, sort of in the same way that magic does. But
so just in the way we're breaking physics. I don't want to break in because I love talking with you, but we are getting close to the top of the hour. So I want to
very close.
I want to give you a chance to plug where people can either find you or find the stuff to buy and put some monetary value behind this coolness.
Okay. I would like to point out that they can go find all of this stuff over on Drive-Thru RPG. Pagan Publishing still has a site there. We're trying to get some of our older books, working with old layout files from the 90s. We're trying to get some of these books back into as PDFs so that people can still have access to them, or print-on-demand products. And we've got a few of our products up available already on the Pagan Publishing site, including some of the old fiction we did for Delta Green. We did short story collections. Arc Dream is also available through Drive-Thru RPG. You can check them out at arcdream.com as well. I believe Arc Dream also has a YouTube channel for making announcements about that. You can find Arc Dream under Delta Green on Reddit. They appear there. So your Delta Green needs will be widely met. They're all over Facebook. My social media is Facebook. You will not find me on Twitter. You will not find me on the ticking of the talks.
The ticking of the talks.
Yeah,
of our thumbs here. The ticking of the talks.
Yeah, I don't have anything to do with that yet, but I should be. Because that's where the contact with the customer is happening in all kinds of places like that. So yeah, you can find our stuff there. Is the best place to do it. We've, as is mentioned before we started, so yes, we've racked up a stupid number of Any awards from Gen Con. Thank you very much, Gen Con voters, for liking our stuff. We used to rack up Origin awards back in the day when we were before the Any existed, but we like the Ennies better. They're much nicer metal. Thank you very much.
And they're fun to say. The Ennies is just a fun word to say.
Yeah. Yes. We've done very well. If you go on to places like Drive-Thru RPG, they have reviews of games there. Some of those old Delta Green products are still, from the 1990s, are still rated by gamers as one of the top. For a while, it was the number one rated product. I think one of our books, Delta Green Countdown, which was a sequel to Delta Green, which we did back in the 1990s, which, sadly, the evil Nazi scientists on the cover don't actually show up in the book. Typical false advertising. and then we couldn't sell it in Germany because the Germans are very sensitive about that. But yeah, this book was rated as like the #1 in Delta Green. The original Delta Green was up there in the top 3 for a very long time. They're still extremely well liked by critics and players who have enjoyed them even as just a setting that they can roll around in rather than necessarily so that they can play. It's turned out that people have enjoyed fiction that we've set there in that. There's plenty of novels and short story collections out there that people can read and get into the feel of what a Delta Green game should feel like. Because
I have to tell you, I am going to be on my way to Drive Through RPG when we are done here in a hot second. And I want to thank you for this hour. Lots of wonder and intrigue, and I feel very inspired in my own work, combining Shadowrun and horror and all kinds of things. And so I want to say thank you, Scott. Hey, Scott Glancy. I'm going to give you
Thanks for having me on.
Clap, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. I've had the clap before, and that was the least annoying clap I've ever had.
Well,
That's
you go.
Probably not the family-friendly thing I was supposed to do, but at least it was still PG rated. So I feel like I've almost been civilized to this entire interview for a whole hour. I think that's pretty good. For
a whole hour. Congratulations.
Yeah. Almost made it. Oh well. Anyways, please buy our books. It's how we keep from having to go dumpster diving behind the KFC for for chicken bits. So yes, please buy our books. I think you'll enjoy them, and you'll enjoy inflicting them on your players. That's the big thing. You will enjoy inflicting them on your players.
All right. Our runners have been hired as security for the world premiere of Billy Redux. Why did they get early viewing access? How could that go wrong? Can our runners fix it, or will Billy be ruined? Join us for the Ariak cut in the next episode, coming up next on Gen Con TV. Don't forget, we've got our wonderful giveaway, the Call of Cthulhu collection. Bumps in the Night. It's 120 pages of non-mythos scenarios for Call of Cthulhu. Final Flight, a standalone scenario set aboard a doomed South American airliner, and Mysteries of Mesoamerica, a source book of Mesoamerican archaeology, culture, and religion with 4 scenarios at 214 pages just for that book alone. Type hashtag RemPC in the chat for your free entry to win. I almost got that in the first try. Thank you so much for donating such a cool prize, A. Scott Glancy. Thank you for the amazing interview today. Don't forget your bonus entries along with hashtag RemPC. You can also impact the upcoming game by donating bits and subs in chat. All funds help to pay our cast and crew and keep us producing content instead of us having a dumpster dive behind the Panera Bread. You can also pick up t-shirts and merch at our Etsy store, realmalternus.com/Etsy. And we have more shows like Shadowrun, Emerald Glitch on our Twitch channel. We are streaming 5 to 6 days a week, which is a ton of content over on twitch.tv/masterofrem, including a Dresden Files RPG, Paranormal Albany on Monday nights, Shadowrun 5th Edition, Shadowrun Denver, Steampunk Fantasy D&D on Sundays, and a whole lot more. Check us out and give us a follow. Thank everyone for joining. I will see you next time, RemPCs.